It seems like we always have that one relative that doesn't seem to understand that it's a newborn, so they want to put everything in the newborn's mouth. Like, oh, he's 6 weeks, he can have some chocolate.
Or doesn't care.
Yep, or doesn't care, or, you know,
well, I think
you're an expert.
This is the fourth trimester, and
Right.
nobody talks about the fourth trimester. And I mean, you can be surrounded by people for the holidays, just surrounded, but you can still feel very alienated.
Yeah.
I think it's preconceived notions that we've put into our heads ourselves of how things need to be.
Or false expectations as to how you were raised. Your mom probably had a little bit more time to keep the house organized, to keep things orderly, and tend to forget to tell you how chaotic it was when you were born and being the only child. And the same thing goes for a family that has 6 or 7 children. You may find that you're a little bit more laid back about things because your mom was more laid back, depending on what order you were at in that sequence of children. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Skip Wyss, and I have the beautiful, wonderfully radiant Dr. Julie Wyss today. How are you?
I'm good.
You're looking really pretty today.
Thank you.
I like this top. It's like a snowball.
Thank you.
It's cute. It works for the holidays. You look beautiful. Dr. Julie, you know, we're on episode 303, I believe, and this is a good episode to talk about holiday postpartum care because I think this time of year, this is a huge deal for a lot of people where they've had their baby. They usually, a lot of women give birth in the fall, October, November. And how do we help these moms better themselves postpartum?
Well, I think
you're an expert.
This is the fourth trimester, and
right.
nobody talks about the fourth trimester. And I mean, that's a big reason of why I started my courses of the postpartum recovery. But it's everybody loves and dotes on the mom while she's pregnant.
Sure.
And then we have the baby, and it's not like people forget about the mom. But let's face it, the focus is on baby. And if this is your first or your fifth, around the holidays, around Thanksgiving, around Christmas, around New Year's, that is the focus. Everybody is so just engaged with the season and then the celebration and all of the firsts with the baby that moms just, I don't want to say forgotten because
they get overlooked.
There you go. They get overshadowed or they get overlooked. And then all of the things that we think that we're going to do for ourselves just gets pushed to the side.
Right.
And this fourth trimester, I mean, it starts off, nobody talks about it to begin with. And then if it's being pushed aside because of the holidays and just other stressors, that is the stress in itself. And there needs to be that focus because this is the time of when moms truly need a village. They need the support because things are happening, and it doesn't matter if you're a first-time mom or a repeat mom. Every birth is completely different.
Right.
And the things that you go through is completely different. And you can be well managed and think that you have everything taken care of. And then things just are different.
Right.
And to not have a community and to not have support to be able to handle that. And I mean, you can be surrounded by people for the holidays, just surrounded, but you can still feel very alienated.
Yeah. And it's the novelty of the new baby. And this is a time of year where baby may get introduced to all the new family members right now. Everybody's excited. Everybody's holding baby, which is a lot for baby. And then it's a lot for mom because in the back of mom's mind, she's worried about baby being around all these people, like immune exposure, being around the weird uncle or the weird aunt.
Well, even
people
going to
putting stuff in their mouths.
to the store and
Yep.
like the baby kisses from
Yep.
complete strangers.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's just unheard of. It's
Well,
crazy.
that, and it seems like we always have that one relative that doesn't seem to understand that it's a newborn, so they want to put everything in the newborn's mouth. Like, oh, he's 6 weeks, he can have some chocolate.
Or it doesn't care.
Yep, or doesn't care, or, but mom does get overshadowed then. And one of the number one tips I have out there for all moms and dads involved that listen to this, is if you have multiple babies and you've been through pregnancy multiple times, make sure that you're checking in on your spouse. Make sure that you're checking in on the mom and the dad. So moms, check in with your husbands. Husbands, check in with your wife's mom and make sure that she's doing okay. Because she may not be doing okay, or dad may not be doing okay either, because from a father's perspective, just as important in postpartum recovery for his wife or his spouse or the mother of his child is his recovery, because he may feel a ton of extra stress now with that new baby. And now he may be considering a second, third job, how to provide, what he's got to do. Probably feels a lot of guilt leaving the house during the day because she's at home now with the baby for the next 6 to 8 weeks if she took maternity leave, or 12 weeks. And the stress of the house not having income for 8 to 12 weeks.
The stress of the holidays in general is just stressful.
Yeah.
And adding in, new baby can bring it to monumental heights. And that's a tendency that then we pull into ourselves.
And for my moms out there is the adage where as you have more kids, you just like to get stuff done while baby's asleep. And you know how important it is to organize your house, especially if you're a mom that's very obsessive compulsive about how the house looks, very orderly. Like you're very orderly. And when things aren't in order or there's a little bit of chaos, that is constantly running in your mind, so you can't relax. So spouses out there, my dads, I know you're working your tails off, but try to find things at the house that can help decrease the load on your wife, because remember, she can't relax. When you tell her, babe, you should really take a nap when baby's asleep. When you're thinking in your mind, I've got 30 minutes to get 50 different things done. So what are some things to you, Dr. Julie, that during your pregnancy and stuff that maybe you would have found really helpful? I don't know if I did them or not 16 years ago, that you found helpful from a dad's perspective to come and help with?
Well, I think number one from the mom side, if you are that person that you feel like the house has to look a certain way or you need to do all of the things, have that honest conversation, because I think as moms, we put the majority of that on ourselves to make it feel like we need to do things or be a certain way. And so many times when your spouse comes home, they're not potentially maybe looking to have dinner on the table or the house to look a certain way. And it's okay for it to be messy because you're doing this life thing, this family thing together.
Sure. Yep.
And so I think for yourselves to cut yourself some slack, that if you have expectations that you need to do all of these things and they're not getting done, I don't think anybody is going to blame you. And so if you need that excuse, we're giving you that excuse. Because I think they're just expectations that you have put into your head of how things need to be. Maybe not how they should be.
Okay.
And I think having that conversation or the understanding of, okay, while you're gone, it's not that I'm staying at home, because people, again, I don't think that we realize raising a family is a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not within maybe the traditional workforce of
you're not getting paid for it.
Of how that's looked. I mean, you're getting paid for it in hugs and affection and seeing maybe these first milestones.
Right.
Right. Dirty diapers. But I think it's preconceived notions that we've put into our heads ourselves of how things need to be.
Or false expectations as to how you were raised. Because if you were in a family where your mom had 5 or 6 children, there's 6 or 7 of you in that siblings, or let's say there's just one of you, your mom probably had a little bit more time to keep the house organized, to keep things orderly, and tend to forget to tell you how chaotic it was when you were born and being the only child. And the same thing goes for a family that has 6 or 7 children. You may find that you're a little bit more laid back about things because your mom was more laid back depending on what order you were at in that sequence of children. Because if you were number 7 out of 7, trust me, your parents were way more tolerant, more worn down and beat to crap by the time you were born, that they were more tolerant and they let things go a little bit easier. Case in point, we have an amazing family. They're a veteran family, and they have 7 children. And I know for a fact that mom is so laid back about things versus when their first son was born. And the husband will say that exact thing. Mike will bring that up. He's like, she's so laid back. And I've asked him, like, so early on when you had your first son, was she like this? He's like, no, not at all. But she's just learned. So what I mean by that is that as a first-time mom, then you may be a little bit more laid back. But if your husband doesn't expect that, and he had a mother that was very clean and cleanly and kept things a certain way, it's going to be probably a little bit more of a culture change or a shock to him. A learning curve, being that maybe you're bringing on that mom mentality that you were raised with, that, you know what, it's okay that the dishes sat for 2 days, or it's okay that the floors didn't get vacuumed. My biggest concern with all of my moms that come in, and same with you, is their mental health. I want them feeling good about themselves. I want them feeling good about their baby, but I also want to see a massive emotional response when baby's emotional. You know, is that mom concerned? Does she perk up? Does she actually feel her breast milk change? If she's breastfeeding, does it let down? Is all of that? Because that tells me what that mom's connection's like. You know, I go back to meeting one of our old patients this summer with Brecken at his junior PGA. And this young girl's name was Harper. And I ran into her for the first time since I saw her when she was born. And her mom came up to me and said, "You saved our life. You saved my marriage with my husband," because she had such bad postpartum because Harper was really sick. She was really sick. And I remember when she came in and set Harper down, and she was bawling in her car seat, and she just walked across the waiting room, the reception area, and did paperwork and didn't even look up.
In a separate part of the reception.
In a separate part of the reception room. But there was such a hard disconnect, both mentally, emotionally, and physically, and she didn't want that, but that's what her body had happen. She was sleep deprived. She didn't know what to do anymore. And she came up to me this summer. I hadn't seen them in 13 years. And she said, "You saved our life." And she made me take a picture with Harper. And she goes, "You know, you remember Dr. Skip." And she's like, I was a baby. She's like, "Well, he saved your life. He saved me and your dad's marriage." But it was holding space and understanding where she was at in that. And I don't know why I went down that road.
I think it's
but it's important to talk about.
It's an understanding, because there's going to be somebody that's listening to this and is at this exact point. And sometimes we joke of, like, when people come to our office, like, no shoes, no shirt, like, no problem, just come in. We will take you as you are, because it's a safe place. It's a healing place.
It is.
And sometimes we just need to be able to come in and not feel judged, because we are doing that ourselves as moms. Like, we are judging ourselves and putting these crazy expectations.
Like undue expectations.
Exactly. And so if it's like the dishes didn't get done, that's okay. The house didn't get cleaned. That's okay. Is the child alive? Is the child fed?
Are you alive?
Are you alive? Are you fed? Like, is everybody breathing? Bath time? Sure, that can happen whatever time. Get a hose out, right?
A hose?
The biggest thing is are you able to get through your day and not feel like you're underwater, like falling away? Disconnect.
I think a really important thing then is to have a conversation with your spouse or the father of your child or mother of your child, and outline what expectations are. What are the boundaries now in that relationship? Because having children brought into the picture changes the boundaries of a relationship, changes the boundaries of a marriage. and what the expectations are.
Well, and I talk about this with my coaching clients, that you have to go back and like starting a business can overconsume you.
Oh, yeah.
Starting a family can be over-consuming of both of you. And it's really important, go back to a previous podcast of dating your spouse.
Yep.
So going back and figuring out in that time of like when you're overwhelmed, maybe it's meeting each other, like setting a note, like I'll meet you at the dishwasher or I'll meet you at the sink, but figure out a way for you to reconnect and do something together and figure out how to go back to dating. You're laughing, but
no,
sometimes
I'm still waiting for those notes to show up.
Figure out
meet
a
you
way
in
to,
the laundry room.
You know, if you feel like you're overextending yourself, do it just a little bit more, because that is sometimes what the other person needs to be able to see, to know, hey, everything is going to be okay. And sometimes just saying those words that everything is going to be okay is what we need to hear.
Yeah. I mean, that still brings me solace when I have times of anxiety or I have things that really start to bug me. You will look at me or you'll text me and say, everything's going to be fine. We're okay. And that gives me a sense of peace and solitude. And I'm not even pregnant or post baby here. Like, we're 16 years into our young adult child, you know, and our son's almost 14. So it's understanding those dynamics, because what happens in your brain is if you don't know the boundaries in your relationship, especially post baby, your brain goes crazy. And it kind of gives you a lot of these false expectations that maybe your spouse most of the time isn't even thinking. And that's a huge to understand that they're okay with how things are, or they just want you happy, and they want you to be able to sleep. That's another thing too, is sleep deprivation is a real thing. And when you are getting sleep, are you actually getting real recovery as a mom? Most moms postpartum have mild forms of sleep apnea because of swelling, because of weight gain, because of excess fluid, because of all these things, plus trying to feed baby. A lot of these issues with mom can cause restrictions in the airways. And then she's not getting full recovery anyways when she's sleeping, let alone being woke up nonstop. And that sleep deprivation will mimic postpartum. And it will mimic baby blues or whatever you want to call it because of sleep deprivation. So you know what, out there, it's okay to nap when your baby's down. It's okay to try to pull yourself away, or maybe it is just taking a shower and putting yourself together. And what I mean by that is that putting yourself together within the standards you feel you need to be put together in. Well,
let me tell you, sometimes like when you are not feeling it and you're like, gosh, I don't want to do anything. If you get a shower in, but if you take off the leggings or you take off the sweatpants and you actually like put yourself together of just putting like adult clothes on, like you're going to go out, it changes your energy. And so sometimes I think that's
having
the first step of combing your hair, brushing your teeth, and actually getting dressed for the day. Even if you're just staying home, that can just start to turn your mood around as well.
And, you know, I've seen people make posts on Facebook and reels and stuff saying, you know, women need to wear makeup to make themselves feel put together. And I've even seen outlandish comments made where if women don't wear makeup, they look washed out and old. And I couldn't disagree with those comments more than what I do now. Like, those comments are horrible. A woman needs to put herself together into what she feels comfortable with. So if she's a lady that's used to wearing lots of makeup or used to putting her face on per se, then put your face on.
And this is an awkward time for women, right? Like, you're dealing with hormones, lack of sleep, probably like baby weight that you're like, oh my gosh, it needs to go. It took you 10 months, right, to do this. It's going to take a while to undo all of these wonderful things that our body did. And again, figure out what that is. Maybe it's just, you know, getting an actual like adult cup of coffee. You know, if it's going out for something, figure out what that thing is that makes you feel good because you deserve it.
Yeah. And that it's those small things that reconnect you to the good things in life for you besides your baby that allow you then to focus on the baby. Sometimes, you know, Michael Chandler said this, he goes, you need to be selfish in order to be selfless. and you are dealing with one of the most selfish people on earth in your little baby, because they're concerned about themselves, which is beautiful, and that's what's needed to survive. But then for you, sometimes you need to be a little selfish for yourself in order to give yourself to your child as much as you possibly can.
In order for you to survive.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the dads out there too. Like, there's certain areas in our lives where we have to be selfish in order so we can give ourselves to our families and help out as much as we can. And I think that in this case, especially being around the holidays and having children, we need to have time for ourselves away from everybody, away from the chaos, so we can focus, because come January 2nd and 3rd, all of that chaos is kind of magically behind you. And now here you are left maybe trying to pick up the pieces from the holidays instead of keeping yourself whole, keeping your family whole, and then going into the new year knowing that you're happy, healthy, and you have a great relationship with your spouse.
I love it.
You know, like that's what we need to do.
I was just thinking, like, if you would plan out, instead of a New Year's resolution of putting everything together, if you have everything together through the holidays, look at how much, like, what greater strength that you would have going into a new year.
Well, you don't have to, right? Everything's already met. So think of the resolutions you could make if you just weren't trying to put together the puzzle and your family and yourself every year, January 1, versus you've got a lot of things put together. You've taken time in November and December where everybody puts everything on coast and hold. And that's why they're picking up the damn pieces come January.
Don't be resting when everybody else.
No, let everybody else rest. Yeah. This is the time for you to move and make a difference. And now this is turning into a self-motivational podcast. But you need this mama and you need this dad, and you need to do things together and set those expectations.
Find your
with
community,
your new family.
Find your village. I host a ladies' night every month. So if that is your wake-up call, or, hey, I didn't know, hit me up. Please come and just hang out, because as much as it is for me, it is for you, because again, we shouldn't be doing this life thing, this raising a family thing all by ourselves.
And there's just a few weeks left here in the new year. I mean, before the new year. So, and guess what? Just because it's a new year doesn't mean it has to be a new you. You can start the new you now. And that's the most beautiful thing, right? So everybody out there, share this podcast, get this out to as many people as you can. Leave us a review on iTunes if you have us, or Spotify, or wherever you're listening to us on. Or if you're on YouTube, we would love a thumbs up. We would love a subscribe, and we would love you sharing this episode. So everybody, go out there, get it done. Have an amazing Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. Bye now.